Thank you very much. Andrea is going to be sharing the slides, and I can deliver the first half of the presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this event. As you've heard, my name's Irene Mcmaster and I work at the European Policies Research Centre, which has bases at the University of Strathclyde, so it was pronounced beautifully, and also at the Technical University of Delft. I'm also a geographer and have been loving all those fantastic maps that we've been able to see today already. And at EPRC, we specialise in research on regional and territorial development. And it's this work that we've been carrying forward, and we've been involved in the development of the Territorial Agenda 2030, supporting work particularly done under the German presidency. And as you've heard, we've also been working closely on one of the pilot actions associated with the Territorial Agenda 2030 and on the Small Places Matter. The Territorial Agenda 2030 was launched by the German presidency in December 2020. It was launched as an action-oriented framework to promote territorial cohesion in Europe. It has its roots in the numerous and complex development challenges facing European territories. And the issues on the screen here, I'm sure, are all too familiar, and each are challenging in their own right. But they also have these differing territorial impacts with differing impacts on capital city regions, small, medium-sized towns, rural areas, inner peripheries, northernmost areas, sparsely populated areas, island areas, coastal areas, the list goes on. But the overall result is this patterns of increased territorial inequality and unsustainable development. And moving on to the next slide, the issues listed are the focus of countless interventions and actions at various levels. And what the territorial agenda brings is a focus on the interrelated and interdependent nature of these issues and the need for coordination and cooperation in how they're addressed, and a recognition of the territorial dimension of change. And that needs to be based on a sort of common understanding of development needs and the impacts of future developments and how they differ between places in Europe, and the need for cooperation and coordination between places and levels of government and policy sectors and societal groups to address the complex issues and utilise also the diverse potentials of different territories. As the next slide shows, the territorial agenda sets out two overarching objectives. The first one, just Europe, and the second one is a Green Europe, and it breaks those down into 6 priorities, which cover a range of issues ranging from balanced development through to sort of specific focus on, for example, the circular economy and environmental improvements. It's a strategic agenda, but it doesn't just apply at the strategic level and is about sort of engagement and capacity across levels of government. And it was quite keenly felt that the framework should be a resource that can be worked with and operationalised, and not just be a pretty document to be put out on a bookcase and stay there. It's a tool to be worked with, and it's supposed to have a role in making things happen and supporting change. And to do this, a number of pilot actions have been launched in association with the territorial agenda, And the aim is that the pilot actions will demonstrate and test and develop practices that could contribute to achieving the territorial agenda priorities and address the sort of development needs on the ground. It's looking at innovative and effective ways to involve different administrative levels in the process. The pilot actions are quite flexible in their focus and character. They're very aimed at sort of place sensitive policy making and sort of the roles that various interventions can have in sort of strengthening the territorial dimension and the territorial focus. There are 6 pilot actions and they deal with a wide range of issues. I won't go through each one of them, but just a few examples are the Ministry for Environment and Climate Action in Portugal is leading one on climate resilience through landscape transition. The Federal Office for Spatial Development and the Alpine Convention in Switzerland is leading an action on climate action in alpine towns and sort of mountainous areas where there's a lot of potential links for countries such as Norway with sort of mountainous areas. And the Ministry of Energy and Spatial Planning in Luxembourg is working on cross-border spatial planning and sort of zero carbon cross-border areas. But as the next slide shows, the pilot action I've been involved in on an ongoing basis is this Small Places Matter pilot action, which focuses on the key role of small towns and villages in the development of integrated territorial development. And it picks up on the opportunity for cooperation across territories on this theme. And the potentials offered by intermunicipal cooperation, and that's particularly the case for more rural, sparsely populated areas. There's also the scope for what can be isolated policy actions to link and engage with wider strategies and initiatives, but also that sort of key importance of grassroots action and engagement for territorial development. The next slide just kind of gives you a very brief overview of the work. The pilot action is led by the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development here in Norway, as you've heard, but the pilot action also involves partners from Poland, Germany, Sweden, Romania, Switzerland, and also Ireland. It's not got a vast amount of resource or funding attached to it. The aim is really to actually look at what's already there, where there are examples of best practice already in operation, and to illustrate that this sort of territorial dimension and the objectives of the territorial agenda and working towards the territorial agenda isn't necessarily always going to be a big new ask for stakeholders. It can build on things that are already there, and a lot already contributes to this. And sometimes it's just a question of looking at things with that sort of territorial lens and being able to join dots that are already there. So there's an emphasis on sort of building strategic links and an aim at the end to sort of come up with a sort of toolkit and be able to identify examples of best practice. The next slide is just a very quick overview of some points that kind of came out of a recent meeting of the group, where obviously there was this sort of recognition of the vital role of small towns and villages, particularly, of course, in rural areas, and also sort of how that is beginning to be reflected at a strategic level in policy. We've already heard at the beginning of this event how in Norway it's being built into and thought about at the sort of strategic high level. There's similar developments elsewhere. For example, the Irish partners in the pilot action have a new rural plan that aims to sort of link to a town centre first planning approach that they have, which is aiming to repopulate and revitalise small and medium-sized towns across the country. There's, of course, a recognition that small towns are a diverse group. What's small in one country or one territory could be actually quite a sizable settlement for compared to another. And you could get quite tangled up in trying to make quite clear distinctions about what exactly defines a small and medium-sized town. But within the pilot action, there's actually been quite a lot of identified value in sort of working across different scales and being able to sort of draw lessons from the experience of slightly different size towns in slightly different contexts. As well as being able to maybe identify areas in other countries that are facing and towns facing similar situations. Scale was a major topic of discussion, particularly in relation to capacity to act and to be able to take up all of the opportunities and to build on areas where there could be potential in the future. There is a lot of emphasis on the role of small towns and cities, small towns and villages rather, at the moment, and there's an enthusiasm and commitment to bottom-up initiatives, and there's a lot of opportunities, but in order to engage with these opportunities and to really get the most from them, it takes a lot of resource, skills and capacities. And similarly, because of the pace and unpredictability of change at the moment, that sort of flexibility and adaptability was also an issue where sort of capacity is a key concern. So in terms of sort of early lessons and interesting cases that were coming from the pilot action, as I've mentioned, there's some covering this sort of strategic level where we've had useful presentations from the Commission, DG Regio and the DG Agri, and we've identified where there are interesting strategic initiatives at sort of national levels which are seeking to engage with small towns and villages. And also challenging the idea of small towns as being weak and needing help, that in a lot of cases, for example, work done in Germany was highlighting what important drivers and dynamic areas many of their small towns were. But coming back to the point about capacity, there has been a lot of interesting work and thinking done on the role of networks for small town development, just something that, for example, Sweden and also Poland has been working on. In Poland, there was a specific initiative on intermunicipal cooperation to support intermunicipal partnerships to identify shared and common development challenges and build up statistical resources and adopt innovative approaches on sort of public engagement. There's also a really interesting example that we'll hear about shortly on sort of Norwegian-Swedish cross-border cooperation. And another interesting example is the German Small Town Academy, which is hoping to continue to support small towns in giving them sort of training and opportunities to articulate and develop and find common solutions for their concerns and needs. And that sort of emphasis on analytics and supporting strategic planning is hopefully a neat handover to Andreea from ESPON, who's been working closely with the Small Places Matter pilot action as well. So I shall hand over to her and she can say a bit about the role that ESPON's been playing. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
I will keep my camera off for be safety reasons. But thank you for this opportunity. Very interesting presentations so far, very applied, very detailed, and very richful. What I would add more is about our specific work that is done specifically for each pilot action, as ESPON has assigned of liaison officers for each pilot action. What we try to do here is always keep and offer the European perspective and overview, but also favor benchmarking. So we are always coming with the ESPON territorial evidence and knowledge, and going through our latest research and well, the vast collection of our research, and making it um, making it more available and putting it in the to the disposal of the pilot actions. Um, I assume the presentations will also be available as well to be shared with the participants. So I won't go very much in detail, but what I would say is that our work on the long term and the future for rural areas has started with under the Portuguese presidency during a co-creation process, and it's for sure going to work last for the next period, for the next programming period as well, because this is a very important topic for us, and here at ESPON, all territory matters. So we are very happy to give our support, technical and through our networks in reaching the pilot actions goals. Thank you very much.